I learned early in life that the wind carries voices. Not whispers, not metaphors, not the poetic nonsense of wandering bards. Actual voices. But I didn't start hearing them until the day I stepped into Thornveil Highlands, a place locals only mention when they're half drunk or trying to scare children into staying home after dark. The journey began out of a mixture of stubbornness, grief, and the kind of numb recklessness that follows loss. My brother had vanished 3 months earlier. They found his pack halfway up the eastern ridge, torn open, its contents scattered in the needles of the leaning black pines. They found his journal a day later, pages soaked, ink smeared, the last entry ripped mid-sentence. They never found him, but I knew he wouldn't have simply walked off the world. He had come here looking for the truth behind the stories, hoping to document a phenomenon he'd been obsessed with since childhood. The singing wind, he called it, a natural harmonic event, an acoustic anomaly, a puzzle that, once solved, might explain dozens of local legends about people who foretold their own deaths. I used to tease him for it. I thought the whole idea was absurd. Now I was following his boot prints into the same storm-thick wilderness, carrying only what I could strap to my back and the weight of everything I'd lost. I reached the high pass at dusk. The sky looked bruised, deep violet fading into a sickly green near the horizon. The air smelled metallic, like rain soaked in old blood. Every few seconds, the wind pulsed. Not gusting, not blowing, but pulsing, like a living thing trying to breathe through lungs full of broken glass. The first sound came as I tightened the straps on my pack. A tone, thin and high, slid through the rocks, carving a shiver straight down my spine. At first I thought it was the screech of an eagle somewhere overhead, but it didn't fade. It harmonized with itself, layering tone over tone until the air vibrated against my teeth. I froze. The wind around me changed direction, circling my body like fingers brushing skin. Another tone joined the first, then another. 3 notes weaving. A trio of invisible flutes playing some impossible melody inside the air itself. I told myself it was natural, some geological phenomenon, resonance through stone. My brother had said the same thing before disappearing. But then the notes began to form shapes, syllables. I don't remember dropping my pack, but I heard it hit the ground behind me. The wind wrapped around my head, slipping beneath my hood, pushing cold fingers into my ears until I felt them nestled just above my eardrums. And the wind sang my name, not close, not loud, not human, but unmistakably mine. My knees tried to buckle. I forced myself still. My breath snagged on the inside of my throat. Then the singing deepened, shifting pitch, forming a phrase. A phrase I didn't understand at first. Not because of the language, it was my language, but because my mind refused to accept it. You will drown among the roots. The words curled around me like smoke, sinking into my skin, lodging behind my eyes. I stood there until cold crept into my bones and darkness swallowed the pass. Only when the tones faded back into the restless hush of night wind did I move again. You will drown among the roots. The prophecy followed me down the slope like an echo that had learned to walk. By the time I reached a sheltered outcrop, my hands were trembling badly. I fumbled to get my small tent up, but the poles kept sliding from my fingers. My breath fogged out in frantic bursts. I'd heard the legends everyone in the valley had. The highlands were notorious for their singing storms, their bone flutes of wind shrieking through the narrow crags. People swore the mountains could foretell how you'd die, that if you listened long enough you'd hear your fate. But no one ever told me the truth. No one told me the wind sings only to those who enter the highlands alone. No one told me the melody clings to you afterward, whether the wind is blowing or not. And no one told me that once the highlands sings your death, you begin walking toward it. I crawled into my tent, zipped the flap, and shut off my lantern. The dark pressed close, humid with the cold breath of stone. I curled in my sleeping bag, trying to ignore the faint rhythmic pulsations echoing in the rock around me, like the stone itself was humming some unfinished part of the song. Sleep did not come easily. Every time I drifted close, I heard it again. Thin at first, then growing, as if the highlands didn't appreciate being ignored. You will drown among the roots. It said it differently each time, stretching certain vowels, fracturing consonants, shifting tone like it was tasting the phrase for the perfect shape. Around midnight, I snapped awake to a faint rustle outside my tent. Something moving across the dead needles. Slow, heavy, intentional. I reached for the knife under my pillow. My hand shook. I hate that I noticed. The rustling grew louder, circling. Whatever it was didn't breathe loudly. It didn't snort or sniff or grunt like an animal. I heard only the sound of something dragging itself just beyond the fabric. Then, hello. The voice wasn't human, but it wasn't the wind either. It sounded like the echo of someone speaking into a frozen cave, the syllables forming seconds too late, trailing with crystalline distortion. Are you awake? I didn't move. My heart pounded so hard the sleeping bag rustled. The thing outside shifted its weight. Its shadow pressed lightly against the tent wall. Too tall to be a wolf. Too thin to be anything natural. Your brother spoke to me, it said, before he learned the song. I stopped breathing. The air temperature dropped fast, so fast my breath crystallized mid-exhale. Frost crawled up the tent fabric in branching patterns like skeletal veins. The creature, or whatever it was, leaned closer. He was brave, it whispered. Are you? I gripped my knife hard enough the hilt dug into my palm. The shadow elongated across the tent wall, stretching upward as though standing to full height. 7 feet, maybe more. The voice lowered, almost sighing. They always come here thinking the Highlands want to explain death. The words trembled, shattering into fragments before reforming. But the wind sings only what must be. A long silence. Then, you will drown among the roots. I lunged, slashing the tent wall.
Fabrice Tore.
Cold rushed in. My knife cut only air. Outside there was nothing.
No footprints.
No shape disappearing into the dark. Only the whisper of wind sliding through winter-bitten branches. I didn't sleep after that. At dawn, I forced myself to pack up and keep moving. I didn't know why. Some instinct. Some pull. The same instinct I realized that had brought my brother here. Once the Highlands sings your fate, something compels you to keep walking into the storm. The farther I climbed, the more the world seemed to warp. The cliffs narrowed into jagged teeth. The trees leaned inward as though listening or whispering secrets through their interwoven roots. The smell of pine changed, soured, took on a hint of rot beneath the sweetness. The song drifted in and out, never fully gone. Sometimes the wind hummed low under the earth, vibrating up through the soles of my boots. Sometimes it floated thin and sharp along the ridgelines like invisible violin strings being plucked by unseen hands. Always woven into it the refrain, you will drown among the roots. I tried to force rational explanations into my head. Sound resonance, low-frequency vibrations, hypoxia, stress hallucinations. But none of those theories explained the voice inside my tent. None explained how the melody seemed to change in response to my thoughts. None explained the growing sensation that something ancient and patient, was following me. By afternoon, the clouds had thickened, heavy and bruised. A storm threatened. I should have turned back. But something tugged at my insides, a pressure pulling me toward the western ridge where my brother's last tracks had been found. As I approached a narrow ravine, I spotted a piece of fabric caught on a thorn shrub. Dark green, frayed. My brother's. I dropped to my knees and pulled it free. My chest tightened. It was from the sleeve of his weather jacket, the one he'd worn every winter since college. I stood slowly, scanning the ground. The ravine floor was choked with roots, thick, gnarled, coiling over each other like petrified serpents. Dead leaves filled the gaps between them, forming a shallow mat that dipped into the earth. My breath hitched. Roots. The wind rose suddenly, sharp and fast, curling as if drawn through the hollow of a bone. And the song started again. But this time it wasn't vague. It wasn't distant. It was right behind me. I felt the sound before I heard it, brushing the hairs on the back of my neck, sliding cold breath along my spine. When I turned, the world tilted. Someone stood 10 paces back. My brother. He looked like he had the last morning I saw him. Wool coat, backpack straps over his shoulders, hair pulled back beneath his hood. But the color was wrong. His face was drained of all warmth, skin blanched to the pale of a winter moon. His eyes weren't brown anymore. They were the color of wind. Not sky, not ice, wind, something that shouldn't have color at all. His lips didn't move, but the voice, his voice, rose inside the air between us. You heard it too. My heart cracked wide in my chest. Elias, I whispered. Are you? He stepped forward, but the movement wasn't natural. Too smooth, too silent, like he wasn't walking but being pulled. When you hear your death, he said, the Highlands keep you. I stumbled back. You? What happened to you? His head tilted, as if trying to recall a memory from underwater. I walked too close to the place where the roots drink the dark. I thought the song was only warning me. I didn't understand. It was calling me. The wind wound between us, rising in pitch. You must turn back, Elias said. You must go home. I can't leave you, I said. He blinked, slow, hollow. I'm not something you can take with you anymore. The storm broke overhead, thunder cracking through the mountains like stones snapping in half. Rain slammed into the ravine in vicious sheets. Elias lifted his hand. You will drown among the roots. Lightning flashed. He was gone. Only the song remained. Only the prophecy. And the roots beneath my feet began to move. The roots weren't roots anymore. Not fully. They writhed, coiling upward like the fingers of something desperate to escape the soil. Wet earth clung to my boots as I stumbled backward, my knife useless in my shaking hands. Rain sluiced down the ravine, cold and sharp, carving temporary rivers through the network of black, glistening tendrils. Every pulse of wind seemed to carry the same phrase, now almost a chant. You will drown among the roots. I tried to run. Every step was treacherous. The roots seemed to anticipate my movement, curling just enough to trip me, snag my boots, forcing me to stumble and claw at wet soil to stay upright. The wind wrapped around me like chains, tugging at my hair, prying at my skin. My brother's voice echoed in the storm, distorted, layered over itself, repeating that terrible sentence over and over until it became almost impossible to think. I wanted to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the howl of the storm, which now felt like a living predator. I realized I was no longer running downhill, but deeper into the ravine, as if the roots themselves were pulling me toward some hidden hollow where the rain pooled in unnatural silence. I fell hard. My knee struck stone beneath the sodden earth, and a wave of pain shot through my leg. I tried to get up, but the roots wrapped around my ankle, firm and deliberate, pulling me downward. I clawed at them, cursing, slashing with my knife, but the leather blade handle was slick with mud, and the steel only nicked the surface. Through the wind, I heard a low hum. Not the wind this time, not the storm, but a resonance from the ground itself. The roots pulsed, vibrating in response. The phrase repeated, slower now, deliberate, like the final intonation of a dark liturgy. You will drown among the roots. A puddle formed beneath me, black as oil, reflecting not the storm above, but a void that seemed to suck light from the world. I realized with a sudden, dreadful clarity that it was deeper than it appeared, deeper than the ravine should have allowed. A labyrinth of water and roots twisting beneath the surface. My hands scrabbled in panic, grasping the wet, gnarled protrusions, trying to lift myself. But each root I touched vibrated under my fingers, almost alive, pressing against my palms with strength that no human muscle should contend with. They were guiding me, pulling me toward the dark pool. And the song rose in crescendo, harmonics layering over themselves, echoing in my skull until I felt my bones hum with it. I thought of my brother again, pale and hollow-eyed, warning me to turn back. But it was too late. The wind had marked me. The Highlands had chosen me. I was no longer just a trespasser. I was the next subject of the prophecy. The first root wrapped around my waist, tight and cold, coiling like a serpent. I screamed, but the sound was carried away by the wind before it could escape the storm's roar. I thrashed, kicking and pulling, trying to free myself, but the roots were patient. They knew how to wait. They knew how to pull without letting me panic too early, prolonging the inevitable. The pool beneath me shimmered unnaturally. Shapes moved beneath the black water. I saw shadows, fleeting glimpses of pale limbs and faces, mouths open in silent terror, eyes wide and hollow. My stomach turned violently, bile rising in my throat. I understood then that the roots were feeding on something, on those who had come before, those who had ignored the wind, those who thought they could escape the Highlands song. And now me, a voice cut through the storm, closer than ever. Do you hear it? The music? The truth? I recognized it instantly. Elias, but not Elias. His voice carried the unnatural timbre of the wind itself, impossible to locate in space. It was in my ears, my chest, my teeth. The roots tightened around my torso, pressing me downward into the mud and rain, drawing me closer to the black pool. I tried to leave, the voice said, slow, mournful. I tried to fight it, but the song, it doesn't let go. You will know it now. You will understand. Water licked the soles of my boots. The black puddle spread, thin and quick, as if it had noticed me and wanted to embrace me entirely. The roots plunged beneath its surface, dragging me forward despite my struggles. The resonance in my skull intensified, the harmonics forming shapes I could not name, impossible geometries twisting over each other in a pattern that seemed older than memory. I realized I was screaming, or perhaps only thinking the sound. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Pain and fear blended with the music, and I felt myself begin to float. Not rise, not fall. Just move in a liminal state between the storm and the roots, caught in their pull. You always think you can escape what you fear most, the voice murmured. But the Highlands know. The Highlands see. The mud and roots coiled around me like a cage. The black water rose, inch by inch, until it lapped at my chest. Shapes beneath its surface became clearer. Ghostly figures, pale faces pressed against invisible barriers, mouths opening in silent screams. Some clawed upward toward me, but each time a root would sweep them back beneath, as if the pool itself was jealous of me, determined I join them. I remembered the first time my brother had laughed at the stories. He had been reckless, foolish, brave. I had teased him for believing in voices in the wind. But now I understood. The singing was real, and it was patient, and it did not care who you were. It simply awaited, weaving the threads of fate into a melody that mortals could not resist. I thrashed harder. The roots bit into my wrists. My knife slipped from my hand and vanished into the mud. Panic tore through me in sharp, hot waves. The voice, Elias's, but not his, softened, almost gentle now. Do not fight it, it said. Do not resist. You will drown among the roots. Accept it. Listen. Understand. The pool rose to my neck. My lungs burned. I struggled one last time, clawing at the writhing roots, feeling the slippery mud beneath me. My vision blurred with rain and blood and the reflection of a sky that was no longer sky but something dark and twisting. The wind rose to a deafening pitch, forming chords that shattered my sense of time. Each note struck inside me, vibrating bones and sinew, syncing my heartbeat with the rhythm of the Highlands. The phrase repeated, now a chant that seemed to emerge from the roots themselves. You will drown among the roots. A sudden clarity hit me as my chest submerged in the black water. The shapes beneath me, those pale, clawing figures, stopped struggling. They stared at me silent, hollow-eyed, and then I understood. This was not death as humans imagined it. It was understanding. The roots, the song, the Highlands itself, it was teaching me. Every struggle, every scream, every thought of escape was part of the lesson. And I was failing. Water filled my mouth. My lungs screamed. My body convulsed. The roots tightened once more, coiling into an embrace both strangling and strangely intimate. It was not violence. It was inevitability. The wind itself hummed in harmony with the roots, a lullaby older than stone. You see now, The voice whispered softer, fading. The song does not lie. It will not lie. You will drown among the roots. I let go. Not physically, my body was still ensnared, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I let the song take me. Let the wind guide me into the black water. Let the roots claim me as one of their own. And in that surrender, I felt a cold serenity. The water swallowed me fully. Mud and roots pressed into my chest and legs. Shapes brushed my arms and legs, spectral and cold, guiding me deeper. The wind roared overhead, harmonics collapsing into a single, impossible tone that resonated in my skull. Then silence, or almost silence. A faint echo remained, faint enough that I thought it might be imagination, or the dying sound of consciousness fading. A voice whispered, Elias's voice, almost human, almost a memory. You are home now. I did not understand what home meant, only that I felt it. The roots pressed me into the black mud, not violently, but perfectly, as if I were finally fitting into something that had existed before me, would exist after me. The water calmed. The wind's song softened, humming low and deep. My mind cleared for the first time since the storm had begun. And the final note struck. You have arrived. The Highlands do not forgive, do not lie, do not forget. I had entered seeking answers, chasing the echo of my brother. I had found truth, and the wind had sung it fully. I understood now why people never returned once they heard their prophecy. Because the wind does not merely foretell. It shapes, it guides, it delivers, and you cannot resist. When I woke, the world was still dark. Not the bruised, rain-soaked darkness of the storm I had left behind, but a cold, oppressive kind of dark that didn't belong to any sky. It felt as though I was submerged, buried beneath something ancient, alive. The air was still. The wind was gone. The song, at least the wind song, had ceased. But there was something else now. An echo, a hum beneath my skin. It resonated in my bones and muscles, threading through my thoughts, tugging at the edges of my awareness. I tried to move, but my body didn't respond the way it should have. My arms felt heavy, weighed down by something that wasn't there, like I was trapped inside a space that wasn't quite my own. And the cold, it was like ice, creeping slowly across my skin, seeping into the very marrow of my bones. I forced my eyes open. The sight that greeted me wasn't the familiar black water of the ravine or the writhing roots, but something darker, more vast. I was lying on a bed of twisted, blackened roots, their surfaces slick with moisture, the knots of their mass woven into a kind of net that stretched endlessly in all directions. The air smelled faintly of decay, old, damp wood, and the silence was deafening. No more wind, no more rain, only the suffocating quiet, and the feeling of being watched. I sat up slowly, my hands brushing against the roots that coiled around me, pulling away from the texture as though they were living things, warm to the touch, almost pulsing with some dark energy I couldn't comprehend. The ground beneath me wasn't stone, or earth, or anything familiar. It was a soft, yielding surface, but it didn't feel like mud. Felt organic, alive. I scanned the darkness, blinking rapidly, trying to make sense of where I was. But there was no horizon, no sky, just an endless expanse of the same twisted, black roots, stretching upward like skeletal fingers, disappearing into the gloom above. I wasn't sure how long I had been lying there. Seconds? Hours? Days? The passage of time felt meaningless here. And then I heard it. A voice. At first, it was barely audible. A faint vibration in the roots beneath me, a murmur in the air. But it grew louder, clearer, until it was unmistakable. A voice that both echoed through the roots and filled my mind all at once, as though it existed simultaneously outside and inside of me. You have returned. It wasn't my brother's voice, nor was it the same voice that had sung the prophecy to me. It was something older, deeper, layered with centuries of knowledge and power. A voice that knew me. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I scrambled to my feet. The roots around me shifted, creaking like ancient bones, and a low hum filled the space, vibrating in the air itself. I tried to speak, but no words came. The voice had taken all sound, swallowed it into the depths of this place. And still the voice continued. You are the last, the one who must understand, the one who will walk the path into the roots. My legs buckled, and I sank back down onto the tangled web of roots, feeling them pull around me like tendrils. The more I struggled, the more they seemed to tighten, pulling me deeper into the earth. I gripped at them, but they were too strong. They didn't hurt. They squeezed, enveloping me in their quiet, insidious embrace. They are waiting for you, the voice said, the words dripping with something ancient. You sought the truth. Now you will join them. Join them? Who? I was about to ask, but before I could, the roots beneath me shifted again, moving with unnatural speed, wrapping themselves around me, lifting me off the ground. The world seemed to tilt sideways, and I felt myself being dragged forward into the darkness. The roots pulling me deeper, deeper still, until I thought I might be swallowed whole. For a moment, the panic surged. I fought against the roots with everything I had, thrashing violently, but there was no escape, no air,
No breeze.
only the crushing pressure of the roots around me, their cold fingers squeezing tighter with every second. And then, just as quickly as they had begun to pull, the roots released their grip. I stumbled forward, catching myself on one of the twisted branches that reached out to greet me. My vision was blurred, the darkness around me impenetrable. But there was something ahead, something faintly glowing in the distance. I wasn't sure if it was real or if it was just a trick of my mind, but it drew me toward it with an irresistible force. I moved toward it, each step slower than the last, as though the air itself was thickening, pulling at me. The hum beneath my feet became a low thrum, vibrating in my chest, almost as though the very ground was speaking to me, guiding me. And then I saw it, a figure, standing in the distance, bathed in a faint, otherworldly light. At first, it looked like a shadow, just another twisting branch of the roots, but as I drew closer, I realized it was a person, or had been. I stopped, my breath caught in my throat. It was Elias, but not the brother I remembered. His body was twisted and bent, wrapped in the same black roots that coiled around me. His skin was pale, stretched tight against the bone, and his eyes, those eyes, glowed with that same unnatural wind darkness. He didn't speak, but his mouth moved, forming words that I could not hear. His lips stretched into a grin that was both familiar and utterly wrong. The roots beneath his feet were thick with the same unnatural pulsations, the same dark energy that had once beckoned me toward the prophecy. You see, now, Elias's voice echoed in my mind, though his lips didn't move. This is what I became, what you will become. There is no escape. There is no return. I reached out, but the moment my hand touched the root nearest to him, a sharp pain lanced through my arm, and I jerked back, gasping. The roots were alive. They had been alive this entire time, feeding on the souls of those who had fallen before me. You must join us, Elias said. His voice was distant now, fading, as though the roots were swallowing him whole, pulling him back into the darkness. There is no freedom, only the song, only the roots. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The song was louder now. The melody from before had returned, its harmonics flooding my mind with images of faces, pale, hollow-eyed faces, and bodies half submerged in black, pulsing mud, the same mud that had once surrounded me. It was the song of the dead, of those who had walked this path before me. The roots shifted again, pulling me backward, dragging me away from Elias's twisted form. My body fought against it, but I was too weak. The song was everywhere, its notes filling every gap in my mind, weaving in and out of my thoughts, until I could no longer tell where the roots ended and I began. And then, in the quiet between the notes, I heard something else. A whisper. You will drown among the roots. I froze. It wasn't the song this time. It wasn't the wind. It was me. The words rose from within me, unbidden, as though they had been lodged there for years, waiting for the right moment to emerge. I didn't want to say it, didn't want to know it, but I understood. The song had always been a part of me. The prophecy had always been mine. And now I was no longer a mere listener. I had become the voice. The wind had shaped me, had shaped my fate. I wasn't meant to escape. I was meant to join. As the darkness closed in, I felt my body surrendering to the roots, my mind slipping away into the melody. The last thing I heard before everything went silent was Elias's voice again. Not in my head, but out loud. Just a whisper on the wind. You are home. The darkness never truly receded. Not as I had imagined it would. It didn't fade into the comforting embrace of sleep or the relief of unconsciousness. No, it felt alive, shifting around me, pulling at me, tugging my very essence into its endless, twisting depths. I was not simply drifting. I was becoming part of the roots, becoming part of the song. It wasn't a fate I could escape, and somewhere deep inside, I understood that it had never been about escaping. The Highlands had never offered a path out. They had offered a path in. And now I was in it. The sensation of sinking deep into the earth intensified. The roots wrapped tighter around my limbs, pulling me down, down, down. But there was no weight, no crushing pressure, only a sickening sensation of being pulled apart at the seams. My mind felt loose, unraveling, as though the fibers of my thoughts were being torn, stretched, and woven into the root system that surrounded me. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, but the rhythm of it was slowly being absorbed by the larger pulse of the land, a deep thrum that vibrated from every corner of this place. It wasn't pain. It was something else, something far older, far more profound. It was an understanding that spread through me, like my mind and the world around me were one. Like I could feel the heartbeat of the earth itself, deep within the soil, beneath the roots. You are home. The voice wasn't Elias's. It wasn't the same voice I had heard in the storm, the one that had sung my death. This voice was something different. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive in the way I understood it. It was older than time, older than the mountains, older than the roots that now intertwined with me. I opened my eyes, though I wasn't sure how. The world around me had shifted again, and the roots had turned into something more. No longer just vegetation. They had become living veins of the land, pulsing with energy. They surrounded me, encasing me in a net of sinew and bone-like strands, and I realized that I was no longer lying on the earth. I was inside it, wrapped in its arteries, as though I had been swallowed whole by the land itself. I could see them now, those who had come before, their faces pressed against the dark, slick roots, eyes wide, mouths open in eternal screams. They were like phantoms or maybe shadows, trapped in the web of this place, caught in the endless loop of the song that had drawn them here. Somewhere deep inside, I knew these were not mere ghosts. These were not mere victims of the wind's prophecy. They were part of it. They had always been part of it. I tried to scream, but my throat was filled with dirt, my mouth full of the taste of the earth. I clawed at the roots that surrounded me, but they pulled me deeper, down into the dark underworld of the land. And that's when I understood. Wasn't just trapped in the roots. I was becoming one with them. I had crossed the threshold. There was no going back. There never had been. The Highlands had always been waiting for me, for anyone who was foolish enough to listen to its song. The wind wasn't just a herald of death. It was a call to the deep places. The land knew what it wanted, and what it wanted was me. All of me, everything I had been, everything I had feared. My body, my soul, my memories, they were all becoming part of it. I felt the wind again. This time it wasn't howling or shrieking. It was softer, gentler, almost like a whisper. It passed over me like a lover's touch, brushing against my skin, caressing the edges of my consciousness. You are home. The phrase repeated, this time not as a command, but as a fact, as though the land itself was asserting its dominion over me. There was no fight left in me, no struggle, only acceptance. I felt the roots inside me now, not just around me. They had penetrated my flesh, twisting through my veins, feeding me their essence. It was a quiet, insidious thing, the way the earth took you slowly, patiently, Like the wind's song, it didn't force you. It invited you. It wrapped you in a tender, unyielding embrace, pulling you into its dark womb. I felt myself becoming more and more a part of the land, my body turning to something else, something ancient, something that no longer resembled the human I had once been. I was dissolving into it, becoming the roots, becoming the earth. I could feel the pulse of the land beneath me, feel the ancient rhythm of it thrumming through my blood. And then, I felt it, the presence that had been waiting for me. It was there, deep in the roots, deeper than I had gone before. It wasn't a physical thing. It was a presence that filled the void, a consciousness that existed in the spaces between the earth and the sky. It had always been there, beneath the surface, waiting for the right time. And now that time had come. It spoke. You have come to claim your place. Its voice, unlike the others, was not soothing. It was cold, dispassionate, like the voice of something that had existed for eternity and would continue to exist after everything else had passed away. You have heard the song, and now you are part of it. Forever. I couldn't respond. Not in words, not in any way that would make sense to me. But in my mind, in the space between thoughts, I felt a deep, infinite understanding of what it meant to belong to the Highlands, to belong to the roots. This was not a curse. It was not punishment. It was fate. The land had taken me, and now I was a part of it. Part of something greater, older, darker than I could ever have imagined. I saw it then, the heart of the land. It wasn't a place. It wasn't a thing. It was an endless, churning mass of roots and earth and stone, spreading out in every direction, beneath every hill, under every stone. The roots reached far deeper than I had ever understood. And in the center of it, I saw the faces of those who had come before me. They were not dead, not in the way I had thought. They had not perished. They had been absorbed, become part of the land. Their voices, their memories, their souls, everything about them had been taken and woven into the very fabric of the earth. They were alive in a way. And now so was I. My mind could no longer tell where I ended and the land began. The roots had taken everything from me, the body, the soul, the memories, and woven them into their dark, eternal tapestry. But it was not torment, not pain, only a kind of deep, overwhelming understanding. The prophecy had not been a warning. It had been an invitation. You will drown among the roots. But it wasn't death. It was rebirth. The roots didn't kill you. They remade you. The last thing I remembered before everything went silent was the wind. It whispered again, as it always had, the words curling through the dark, through the soil, through the air. You are home. When the transformation was complete, there was no sense of triumph or victory.
No celebration.
No light at the end of the tunnel. There was only a deep, endless stillness that enveloped me, wrapping me like a blanket of earth and roots. I felt like I was floating, but not in the way I once had. There was no air here, no need for breath. I was part of the roots now, woven into their dark web. The sensation of my body was gone, replaced by an overwhelming feeling of being. I could no longer distinguish where I ended and the land began. It was as if my consciousness had been absorbed into the earth itself, a part of its deep, pulsing heart. I heard them before I saw them, whispers, faint voices, murmuring, like a distant conversation just beyond my reach. I felt myself drawn toward them, toward the voices. They were familiar in a way, distant echoes of a life I once lived, memories of a time before the roots had claimed me. I had been human then. Had I been human? The questions slipped away as I moved. Closer, or perhaps willed myself closer. The voices became clearer, their words sharper. These were the ones who had come before me, the ones whose souls had been absorbed by the roots, their bodies twisted and broken, their minds woven into the earth. They were not dead, not truly. They lived, but not as I had known life. They existed in the roots now, their voices carried by the wind, their bodies consumed by the very land they had sought to escape. And then I saw them, faces, faces like mine, pale, contorted, their eyes wide and empty, but not vacant. Alive, alive in a way that was beyond understanding. Their mouths were open, but no words escaped. Their eyes tracked me as I approached, a silent recognition passing between us. They were me, and I was them. I reached out, not with hands, but with the very essence of my being. And in that moment I felt them, all of them. Inside me, their memories, their thoughts, their fears. They had been absorbed by the roots, had become a part of the land's consciousness. I could feel their desperation, their yearning to escape, their understanding that they never would. But I also felt something else, something that sent a chill through my transformed essence. Presence. Darker than the roots, older than the land. It was the heart of the highlands, the true power behind the wind's song. It was alive in a way that no being should be. I felt its gaze, cold and vast, as it turned toward me. I had been consumed by the roots, absorbed into the earth. But I was not its master. I was its servant, and now I was its witness. The voice spoke again, though it was not in words, not in a language I understood. It was thought, feeling, a presence that reached into the very marrow of my being. You have come to understand, it said, but not with sound, not with human words. Its voice was the land, its rhythm, its pulse. You have always been a part of this. From the moment you heard the song, you were mine. You will never leave, and you will always be remembered. Its words twisted in my mind, reshaping my thoughts, flooding my consciousness with understanding. The song, the prophecy, it had never been meant to warn. It had been meant to call. The wind, the storm, the song, the roots, they were the land's way of finding those who could understand. Those who could join the deep, eternal consciousness of the earth. The roots weren't just a prison. They were a communion, connection, a cycle of death and rebirth that spanned centuries, stretching back to a time when the world was young and the land was still learning. Those who entered the highlands were not lost. They were found. And now I had been found. I could feel the earth shifting beneath me, a deep groan that resonated through the roots. It wasn't a sound, but a sensation, a tremor of consciousness spreading through the land. I was not alone anymore. I was surrounded by them, the souls of those who had come before me, their minds and memories intertwined with the roots, their thoughts moving like currents beneath the earth. I felt their desire, a desire to understand, to find meaning, to escape. But it was not an escape that the roots offered. There was no freedom in the roots, only acceptance. I understood now. The prophecy had been true, but not in the way I had thought. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a curse. It was an invitation to join the land, to become a part of something greater. The wind had been a guide, a voice that called to those who were destined to listen. And I had listened. You will drown among the roots, the voice said. But now it wasn't a statement of doom. It was a truth and inevitability. The roots didn't kill you. They didn't destroy you. They remade you. The roots were not the enemy. They were the answer. The wind, the song, it had always been part of the land. It was the language of the earth, the rhythm of its heart, the pulse of its being. Those who were drawn to it were chosen, and those who were chosen were claimed. I felt the presence of the land again, that deep, eternal consciousness that filled every inch of the earth. It was not a god, not a deity, but something older, more primordial. It had always been here, beneath the surface, beneath the soil. And now it had taken me. I could feel it, its power, its knowledge. I was no longer a part of the world I had known. I was part of the roots now, part of the earth itself, a consciousness that stretched beneath the mountains, deep into the soil beyond the surface. I wasn't alive anymore, not in the way I had been, but I wasn't dead either. I was part of something greater, something that understood. And then the song returned. Not the wind, not the voice, but the song, the deep, resonant hum that filled my mind, that filled the land. It was a melody without words, a rhythm without time. It was the pulse of the earth, and it was me. The roots wrapped tighter around me, and I let them. I didn't fight it anymore. There was nothing left to fight, only understanding, only truth. I was home. Time, or what remained of it, lost all meaning within the roots. There were no days, no nights, no passage of hours. There was only being. The land pulsed with life, but not life as I had known it. It was the life of the earth itself, the kind of existence that stretched beyond time, beyond death. It was an endless cycle, a rhythm that repeated itself over and over in the deep places, beneath the soil, beneath the sky. And yet, even as I became more intertwined with the land, there was a part of me that remembered. A part of me that could still recall the person I had once been, the one who had stumbled into the highlands, naive, searching for answers. I could still feel the remnants of fear in my chest, the deep, instinctive panic that had seized me when I had realized what the song meant. I could still hear my brother's voice, distant and broken, calling to me from the storm. But that part of me, those memories, faded with each passing moment. The longer I remained entwined with the roots, the more I understood. I was no longer the person I had been. I was something else now, something ancient, something that belonged. The wind returned, soft and insistent, curling through the roots like a whisper. It wasn't the same as before. It wasn't the same song. This was something deeper, something more personal. You have joined us, it whispered. The words were not an invitation this time. They were a declaration, a truth I could not deny. I had joined, and in that joining I had become a part of the land. I was no longer just a witness. I was part of the pulse, part of the rhythm. My memories, my past, had slipped away like water through cracks in stone. There was no room for them here. There was only the land, only the roots, only the song. I could feel the others now, the ones who had come before me, the ones who had been consumed by the earth, their bodies twisted into the dark, endless web of roots. They were not gone. They had not perished. They had become. They were all around me. I could sense their presence, their essence, as they moved through the land, as they moved through me. I could feel their thoughts, their desires, their pain. The roots had consumed them, yes, but the roots had also changed them. They were no longer human. They were no longer bound by time. They were part of the land, part of the song. And now I was too. I didn't know how long it had been. Days? Years? Centuries? Time was irrelevant here, lost in the deep, dark places of the earth. I had become part of the land's eternal pulse, part of its rhythm. I could feel the earth's heartbeat beneath me, its slow, steady thrum vibrating through every root, every vein of soil. It was a sound that filled me, that connected me to the land in ways I couldn't fully understand. But I felt it. I was it. I felt the roots stretch out before me, winding through the soil, disappearing into the endless darkness. I followed them not with my feet, but with my mind. The land called to me, urging me forward, urging me deeper into its embrace. And I followed, because there was no choice. There was no escaping. The deeper I went, the more I understood. The more I could feel the truth. The land was not just a physical place. It was a consciousness, an ancient being that had existed for eons. It had always been here, beneath the surface, beneath the sky. It was the earth. The wind, the storm, the song, they were just its way of calling, of reaching out, of inviting. And now I had answered. The roots were everywhere. They stretched across the land, down into the deepest caverns, up through the mountains, across the rivers, into the very air itself. They were the land's veins, the lifeblood of the earth. They had always been here, waiting. And now they had claimed me. They had claimed all of us. The others, the ones who had been here before me, hadn't disappeared. They were still here, woven into the roots, their voices calling to me from the dark places. They were not lost. They were part of the land now, part of its eternal rhythm. And so would I be. The song returned again. The melody that had once terrified me. The song that had whispered my death. It wasn't a song of doom anymore. It was a song of rebirth, of belonging. I could hear their voices now, all of them, those who had come before me. They were not lost. They were part of the earth, part of the land, part of the song. You are one of us now. It wasn't a question. It was a truth that had always been there, waiting for me to understand. The song filled my mind, filled my soul, filled my being. I could hear it in the wind, in the roots, in the very air around me. It was everywhere. It was everything. And I understood. I understood that I was not an outsider anymore. I had been chosen, yes, but it was not by chance. It was by design. I had come here for a reason. I had heard the song because I was meant to hear it. I had been chosen to join the land, to become part of the earth's eternal pulse. And now I was. The roots wrapped tighter around me, pulling me deeper into the earth. There was no pain, only peace. A peace that spread through my mind like a warm, familiar blanket. I felt the presence of the land, the consciousness that had always been here, waiting. It was not a god, not a deity. It was something older, something deeper, something that had always been. And now it was me. I could feel the others with me, the ones who had come before. They were not lost. They were not gone. They were part of the land. They were part of the song. And now so was I. You are home. The wind whispered, its voice soft and final. I no longer feared it. I no longer feared the roots, the song, the land. I had joined. And in that joining, I had become part of something greater, something older than time itself. The land, the earth, the roots, they were not enemies. They were family. And now I was part of them. I was part of the earth's eternal rhythm. The song had called me. The roots had claimed me. And now I was home.